Welcome to the Crawlcast. I'm your host, George Krawczak, and this is what happened in Week 9 of the NFL season. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. Now let's get started. The first game was the Baltimore Ravens versus the Miami Dolphins, and the Ravens won 28-6. So the Ravens won 28-6. The Ravens' leading passer was Lamar Jackson, who threw for 204 yards and 4 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Derrick Henry, who had 119 rushing yards. Their leading receiver was Zay Flowers, who had 64 receiving yards. For the Dolphins, their leading passer was Tua, who had 261 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher was Devon Achane, who had 67 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Jalen Waddle, who had 82 receiving yards. So the Ravens just completely dominated this entire game. It was interesting because the Dolphins were very good last week. And so I was like, oh, are the Dolphins back? Is this the old Dolphins under Mike McDaniel, whose offense played excellent? Tua was playing excellent. The defense was playing pretty well. Nope. They reverted right back to this new Dolphins of this year, where they just looked horrible. Lamar came back, and Lamar looked really good. But also, I feel like you have to have a caveat. Yes, he looked really good, but it's against this terrible Miami defense, which is one of the worst defenses in the league. The Dolphins did fire their general manager, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know what it'll take for either Mike McDaniel to get fired or save his job, because we're at the point where the past few years he has been a really good head coach, and I think he will make an excellent offensive coordinator wherever he goes. But this year has been such a disaster where the team's been horrible, he's lost the locker room, and everything's been terrible. So, giving him the remainder of the season, I don't know how much he can prove versus how bad he can go to have him get fired or keep his job. But at this point, I say he kind of has to get fired. I think the relationship's kind of worn thin. And then the Dolphins. It's interesting. They're talking about potentially cutting Tua, and we'll see what happens there because I think we're at the point where people need to realize, if a starting quarterback is a former first round pick and they have not proven enough to be the franchise guy, don't give them a huge contract. Because I think the story of three quarterbacks that are almost exactly the same. You have Tua, you have Kyler Murray, who it's announced that he's getting benched for Jacoby Brissett and might get cut after the season. And then Trevor Lawrence, who is still the Jaguars starter, but has not been playing particularly well as the Jaguars starter. So Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, and Tua. They're all first-round picks, and they all played kind of average, where they played well enough where you can't consider them a bust, but they didn't play well enough to say, or I'm sorry, they didn't play bad enough where you consider them a bust, but they didn't play well enough where you consider them a franchise guy. So the Dolphins, Cardinals, and Jaguars felt a huge pressure to give these guys top of the line contracts and make them the highest paid players based on potential. And now they're all regretting it, it seems like. Maybe not the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, although I think they should regret it because I think he's still technically the highest paid, or at least the second highest paid quarterback, and he's definitely not the best or second best quarterback in the league. And so I think now if a quarterback's average, don't give him a huge contract. Give him the Sam Darnold treatment, where Sam Darnold surprisingly took an average contract to be the Seahawks starter, and it's kind of worked well. So overall, you have to be very happy if you're the Ravens because you got the win and you're trying to make the playoffs, and the Dolphins just continue being a disaster. The next game is the San Francisco 49ers versus the New York Giants, and the 49ers won 34-24. So the 49ers won 34-24. The 49ers leading passer was Mac Jones, who threw for 235 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Christian McCaffrey, who rushed for 106 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Christian McCaffrey, who had 67 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Giants, their leading passer is Jackson Dart, who threw for 191 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Jackson Dart, who had 56 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Darius Slayton, who had 62 receiving yards. So the 49ers dominated basically throughout this entire game. The 49ers completely collapsed and looked terrible last week, and I'm like, oh, maybe we'll see another collapse. Maybe Mac Jones is down the downswing, and this defense filled with backups, maybe they'll start collapsing and playing terrible. But no, they really turned it around. Last week seemed just like a fluky game, and so Mac Jones played really, really well. And now I saw some people talk about, or does there need to be a quarterback controversy? Right now, I would say no, because Brock Purdy just got a huge mega contract, and the 49ers would obviously prefer him to be the starter. So as soon as Brock Purdy's healthy, which will probably be next week, I would give Brock Purdy the job until he loses it. Until he has like an absolutely terrible, horrible game where it's like, we cannot justify this, put Mac Jones in. But Mac Jones has uh, earned himself to be either a top tier trade candidate or a top tier backup come for the future years. Like maybe this offseason he gets traded or something like that. And so I think they should stick with Purdy because of the contract, and that alone you just have to stick with because it's so fresh and new. And then the Giants. Jackson Dart played fine. I'm really disappointed in this Giants front. I thought their defensive line would have played much better because their defense has been playing better as of recently, but nope, this Giants team is just a disaster. They're struggling with injuries. Malik Neighbors out for the year, Scatabo out for the year. And so, other than that, it's like Giants are beat up. They're doing what they can. Jackson Dart's trying to play Superman, and he's been playing pretty well. I definitely say he's been the best rookie quarterback out of who is it? Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel, and Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart's definitely been the best out of those three, but overall, just not much to say there. The 49ers were the better team, and Mac Jones continues to impress. And it seems like this offense is run completely through Christian McCaffrey. Kind of like how the Falcons offense tends to be run through Bijan Robinson, where it's like if you shut down Bijan, you shut down the offense. This seems like the same for the 49ers. Or if you shut down McCaffrey, you shut down the offense. The next game is the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Tennessee Titans, and the Chargers won 27-20. So the Chargers won 27-20. The Chargers' leading passer was Justin Herbert, who threw for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher was Justin Herbert, who had 57 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Oronde Gadsden, who had 68 receiving yards. For the Titans, their leading passer was Cam Ward, who had 145 passing yards. Their leading rusher was Tony Pollard, who had 56 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Alec Eminor, who had 46 receiving yards. So I first off just want to point out that Gadsden, the tight end for the Chargers, has really emerged as the top threat for the Chargers and has played extremely well the past several weeks. And then Justin Herbert, where the Titans definitely kept it close, and it really boils down to one horrible interception by Justin Herbert. And that's what it seems like has been happening a lot with the Chargers, where Herbert just needs to play better and stop making these stupid mistakes, where the Chargers are a good football team, and they play really well, and they should be dominating, and Herbert has a lot of the best games and is making a lot of really amazing throws. It's just that when he keeps making one stupid throw a game that seems to keep the other team in it. Like, he keeps making one key mistake, and if they make the playoffs, which I think they will, it's going to cost them. Like, if he keeps making one mistake a game, some games you can't afford to make one mistake. And especially this, like, with how bad the Titans are, you just can't make stupid mistakes. And then the Titans side, like, you hung in it, I guess. Still the worst team in football, but at least you hung in it and got it close. But Chargers gotta be happy with a win, keep the momentum, but Herbert just needs to play cleaner, better football. And then, again, the Titans show improvement, but they're still not a very good team. The next game is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Detroit Lions, and the Vikings won 27-24. So the Vikings won 27-24. The Vikings' leading passer was J.J. McCarthy, who threw for 143 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher was Aaron Jones, who rushed for 78 yards. And their leading receiver was Jordan Addison, who had 48 receiving yards. For the Lions, their leading passer was Jared Goff, who threw for 284 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was David Montgomery, who rushed for 40 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was tied with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta for 97 receiving yards. So this game was very interesting. So first off, I'll give a lot of credit to the Vikings defense. They played really well. The past several weeks, they've been struggling a lot, and it's like, oh wow, all these, even though the Vikings defense was expected to be good, this season overall has been a pretty poor defense, especially with their expectations. And then J.J. McCarthy. It is interesting because if you look at like the totality of the game and every single throw, overall I would say J.J. McCarthy did not play that well. like overall, if he had more terrible throws than good ones, but every single time they needed a key throw out of J.J. McCarthy, he provided it. Every single key third down, the touchdown, he had a really good scramble. So, like, it kind of felt like a little bit like him at Michigan, where it's everyone around him playing well, and then him making the couple of key plays that win him the game. And then the Lions, like, even though their offense looks good on the stat sheet, like, it felt like for most of the day they were shut down. And this Detroit offense hasn't been shut down like that since week 1 versus the Packers. And so overall, just, you got to give them a lot of credit. The Vikings played well and hung in there. And it's going to be very interesting if only one win separates the Packers, Bears, Vikings, and Lions. So this division is still completely up for grabs, even though I do think the Bears and Vikings are the lesser teams. But overall, Lions got to be disappointed if a loss. And then Vikings, it's still kind of like the question mark of J.J. McCarthy on what you have. Because, like I said, if you look at the total game, he did not play that well. But if you look at the key moments, it's like, wow, insane, best quarterback in the NFL. So you still kind of have a huge question mark next to J.J. McCarthy. Because, again, like I said, he deserves credit for making the key throws, but it's the easy throws that you also need to make. So, like I said, overall, you got to be happy for the Vikings and very, very disappointed if you're the Lions. Again, like, it just felt like the Lions were off all day. The offensive line was struggling, the corners were struggling. And then the interception by Terry and Arnold, it was interesting because, so it was definitely behind Jalen Nailor, but Nailor caught it, and as they were going up to the ground, it looked like Arnold ripped it out, and then the ball also kind of touched the ground, and it just felt like every, like, 50-50 call like that, like, and throughout the whole season, it feels like every single 50-50 call goes for the Lions and against the Vikings. Like, that's been every game this season, so it was just a weird play, but again, you just gotta be disappointed if you're the Lions. And there was a huge blocked kick as well, I want to point out, and that felt like a game changer because uh, allowed the Vikings to get a field goal, and the Lions did not get that field goal. So yeah, overall, the Vikings just played extremely, extremely well. The next game is the Atlanta Falcons versus the New England Patriots, and the Patriots won 24-23. So the Patriots won 24-23. The Patriots' leading passer was Drake May, who passed for 259 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher was Travion Henderson, who had 55 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is Demario Douglas, who had 100 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Falcons, their leading passer was Michael Penix Jr., who had 221 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Bijan Robinson, who had 46 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is Drake London, who had 118 yards and 3 touchdowns. So this game felt like the Drake London show. Like, both these teams played really, really good. Drake May did have one interception that was a little bit clunky, but other than that, like, this was a really good game. The biggest difference of the game is the Falcons score a touchdown right at the end, and then their kicker misses the extra point, thus giving the Patriots a 1-point win. This Falcons team is still the most confusing team in the NFL, because how does this work? They get blown out by the Panthers, they looked terrible last week, and now they almost beat the Patriots that looked like one of the best teams in the NFL. Like, I just can't explain it. Drake London looked great, Michael Penix looked great, and then Drake May also looked pretty good, although this wasn't an excellent game by him, but it was a pretty good game. So I got nothing to say here where the Falcons continue to be confusing. Like, this literally feels like they could beat, like, the 72 undefeated Dolphins, and then they could lose to the, like, 2008 Lions. Like, it's like, if you tell me this team beats some of the greatest teams in the NFL, I'd be like, okay, I can see that. And then if you tell me they lose to some of the worst teams in NFL history, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. I just can't explain this Falcons team. It makes no sense. And you gotta be happy that you stuck in with the Patriots, and then Patriots, that's a little bit closer than you like. The defense did struggle, but you got the win. The next game is the Indianapolis Colts versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Steelers won 27-20. So the Steelers beat the Colts 27-20. The Steelers' leading passer was Aaron Rodgers, who threw for 203 yards and a touchdown. Their leading rusher is Jaylen Warren, who had 31 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and their leading receiver is Calvin Austin, who had 56 receiving yards. For the Colts, their leading passer is Daniel Jones, who threw for 342 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Their leading rusher was Jonathan Taylor, who rushed for 45 yards. And their leading receiver was Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr., who had both had 115 receiving yards. So this game was a real shocker by the Steelers defense because they got embarrassed by the Bengals, which now is looking like the Bengals might have an elite offense, so maybe that wasn't too bad, but they still got embarrassed by them. And then they got embarrassed by the Packers. And so the big question is how does the Steelers defense hold up against the Colts offense? Turns out they held up really, really great. They absolutely destroyed this Colts offense. And honestly, the biggest issue was the Steelers offense because the Steelers defense kept getting turnover after turnover after turnover. I think it was like 3 picks and 1 fumble or 2 fumbles. And so I think it was 1 fumble. So 4 turnovers by the Steelers defense. And the Steelers offense kind of struggled to capitalize after that. And that's what really kept the Colts in this game. And then Daniel Jones, he kind of like reverted back to his old self. And this is what I was talking about, where it's like sooner or later we're going to see like a Daniel Jones game from his old self where he kind of falls apart. And this was it. He did not play well at all. And so I do think this is more likely a one-off. I do think the Colts are still a good team. I don't think they're as good as 7-1 like they were, but I still do think they are a good team. And then the Steelers, if their defense can start playing at a high level, this feels like they can be really, really great. Because even though the offense struggled today, overall, Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers offense has been really good. And the defense has been one of the most disappointing and one of the worst defenses in the NFL. One thing that really changed it for me is I know it was due to injuries, but they transitioned Jalen Ramsey from corner to free safety. And I think that worked with him a lot better because safeties, you don't need to be as athletic. And Jalen Ramsey is clearly losing a step with his age. And so I think this was a much better fit for him, and he played really, really well. And so this Steelers team is looking really good. And then the Colts. Yes, you only lost 2 games this year, so you don't need to panic, but you just got to hope Daniel Jones doesn't give another performance like that, or this could be a potential collapse. The next game is the Denver Broncos versus the Houston Texans, and the Broncos won 18-15. So the Broncos won 18-15. The Broncos' leading passer is Bo Nix, who threw for 173 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Their leading rusher is J.K. Dobbins, who rushed for 61 yards. And their leading receiver was R.J. Harvey, who had 51 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Texans, their leading passer is Davis Mills, who threw 137 yards. Their leading rusher was Nick Chubb, who had 34 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Dalton Schultz, who had 77 receiving yards. So in this game, this was a very defensive-heavy battle, and everyone thought it was going to be, because the Broncos have a good defense, and the Texans have a good defense. And then the Broncos' offense has been struggling a bit under Bo Nix, and the Texans' offense has been struggling a lot under C.J. Stroud. So the Texans started getting up early, and it seemed like they're really on a roll, and they were going to have this game in hand. And then C.J. Stroud got injured. He left the game early with a concussion, and the Texans just could not do anything after that. The Texans defense still did a really good job stopping the Broncos offense because the Texans defense is elite, and they did a really great job. And then Bo Nix, he still struggled, and Davis Mills, I think he's a capable backup. I think he's probably one of the better backups, but he just couldn't do anything against this Broncos defense. And then Bo Nix, honestly, I know I say this every week, but he just needs to play better. Like, he cannot keep getting carried by the defense every single week. He was a first-round pick, and now it feels like there needs to be more expectations on him to play better. Like, he just needs to play better, plain and simple. Stop making the bad mistakes, stop throwing the bad balls, and because he was really good his rookie year, but just since then, he's struggled a lot. It kind of reminds me of C.J. Stroud a little bit, where C.J. Stroud, amazing rookie year, and then has struggled ever since then. Broncos, though, you got to be happy for the win, and then the Texans. Still an elite defense, but I think you're reaching the point where the Texans just can't make the playoffs. They're kind of past the point of no return. The next game is the Chicago Bears versus the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bears won 47-42. So the Bears won 47-42. The Bears' leading passer was Caleb Williams, who threw for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Kyle Monagwai, who had 176 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is Colson Loveland, who had 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. For the Bengals, their leading passer is Joe Flacco, who threw for 470 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher is Chase Brown, who had 37 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is T. Higgins, who had 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this game was insane, especially at the end. So first off, I just want to say, Bears played really good. And the most shocking stat of the day is Caleb Williams had 2 catches for 22 yards and a touchdown, and was targeted 2 more times than Rome Odunze. So here's what happened at the end. So there was I think about 2 minutes left-ish, and the Bears are up by 14. So the Bengals go down, score a touchdown, kick an onside kick, get it. Well, then they go for 2. Then kick an onside kick, get it, and then go down and get another touchdown in the final seconds. And so then the Bears, with about maybe 13 seconds left, I'd say more than that, maybe about 40 seconds left, then get the ball back. So the Caleb Williams, first play, panics in the pocket, nearly gets sacked, throws it away. Second play, panics in the pocket, nearly gets sacked, throws a bad ball. Then the third play, hits Colston Loveland, and then the Bengals safeties just don't tackle him, and he just walks all the way to the end zone for the touchdown and for the win. It just makes no sense. Here's the thing, everyone knew this. Everyone talked about how this is why you're paying T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, and you're paying nobody on the defense, because the defense is this bad. And that's why everyone talked, I know everyone talked about it as jokes, but it was being serious, where it's Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense is going to have to score 50 points a game to keep them in it. And that's the thing about it, is I want to give the Bears credit. I want to give Caleb Williams credit, because the Bears did look really, really good. But also the same defense that let Justin Fields and the Jets offense look amazing, even though that's one of the worst offenses in the NFL. This defense is just insanely bad, and now Dolphins players are sick of it. Before, everyone just acknowledged that they're bad, but this one, you really saw frustration after the game from Jamar Chase, and all the Bengals leaders were this is unacceptable. And especially then, because you knew exactly what the Bears were doing. You know they were looking for one deep pass to try to get in field goal range. And that's what happened. Then after giving up the catch, you don't even tackle them, because at least you have a shot at a missed field goal, but when you just walk into the end zone, they win. It makes no sense. This Bengals team is honestly disgraceful. This Bengals defense is terrible. And on the flip side, I also want to say, give credit to Joe Flacco. 470 yards, 4 touchdowns, set a new record for most passing yards in a game for his career, and most passing yards in a game for someone over 40. This is just insane to me. So, yes, Joe Flacco playing really well. And honestly, he's looked great since coming to the Bengals. And I do have to say, I know a lot of people talk about system quarterbacks and stuff like that. Do we maybe need to have that conversation about Joe Burrow, where it's look at Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has a lot of insane weapons. And also Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts and Brock Purdy both have a lot of insane weapons. So you say, okay, look, plug and play any quarterback in those systems, and they'd probably succeed. Do we maybe need to have that same conversation about Joe Burrow, where it's wow, this offense has a lot of weapons, especially with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Can you plug and play any quarterback in the system and have them succeed? Maybe not, because Jake Browning failed, and then if you look at the other ones, where it's with the Eagles, Kenny Pickett looked good, and Tyler McKee looked good, and then with the 49ers, Mac Jones looks good. So maybe not, but I don't know. I think that's maybe an interesting conversation that needs to happen. But overall, man, this is just a disgraceful performance for the Bengals. They're 3-6. I think they're probably out of the playoffs, because you can't make the playoffs with a defense this bad. And then the Bears, 5-3. I still don't think they're as good as 5-3, but heck, they won, they deserve it, and even though it's against terrible Bengals defense, you still need to win against terrible teams. The next game is the Carolina Panthers versus the Green Bay Packers, and the Panthers won 16-13. So the Panthers won 16-13. The Panthers' leading passer was Bryce Young, who threw for 102 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher was Rico Dowdle, who had 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver is Ted McMillan, who had 46 receiving yards. For the Packers, their leading passer was Jordan Love, who threw for 273 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher was Josh Jacobs, who had 87 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Romeo Doubs, who had 91 receiving yards. So the Packers look bad in this game, and I'm going to address a couple of things. So number one about the Panthers. Their rushing game looks really good. Bryce Young is still struggling because they're not asking him to do anything, and he's basically just handing the ball off and winning. So I don't necessarily think that's why I hate wins being a QB stat. And the biggest example I'd looked at is last year with the Lions, where Jared Goff, I believe, threw 5 touchdowns in a game against the Bills and lost. And then he threw 5 interceptions in a game against the Texans and won. Whereas Bryce Young really hasn't played good in any of his wins, but he just keeps handing the ball off and winning. And then the Packers. The game plan was just off from the beginning because so there was an insane amount of wind. Even the Panthers head coach came out and was like, "Yeah, we chose to that we used the coin toss to decide try to get with the wind in the second half." So the Packers were scared to pass the ball downfield because of the wind. And so they're doing a lot of short passes and a lot of screens, and they want to run the ball, but their offensive line is so injured that they really can't run the ball. And that's where they lost because Rico Dowdle was able to run the ball on the Packers. But here is my big conspiracy theory on why the Packers lost. And I will apologize for this. So I am a Packers fan. I'm more than that. I'm a Packers owner. And I have watched every single Packers game this year except for 2. I missed the Packers versus Browns because of a family emergency, and then I missed this game because it wasn't showing on my local television on where I was living, because where I live we got Lions versus Vikings. So, this is my conspiracy. They have not lost a game that I have watched. So I will try my best for the Packer Nation out there to watch every single Packers game and make sure they don't lose another one. That to me is the only logical conspiracy theory about it. But anyways, back to the games. Brandon McManus missed another field goal. And this is why I says I gave him a lot of grace last week. So I was like, okay, he's coming back from an injury, and so he played bad coming back from an injury. Now we're starting to get the no excuses time. I think Lucas Harvisick deserves a shot next week because I said let McManus be the starter until he plays his way out, and I think he's done it. I know a lot of people are saying, why is McManus even on the team and deserves a shot? A couple of things. Number one, they just gave McManus a huge contract. And then number two, even though McManus has been struggling the last 2 games, and Harvisick is perfect this year, throughout their careers, McManus has been way better than Harvisick. And so that concerns me, is saying you cut McManus, and then even though he's looking good the 2 games he played, Lucas might start missing some kicks. And then here's the big news. Tucker Kraft tore his ACL and is done for the year. So, a couple of options. I haven't seen a single person talk about this, but this is a little bit of an idea in my head. The Browns are terrible, and they're done for the year. So, do you trade for David Njoku? Because Harold Fanning with the Browns is looking really good, and the Packers need a tight end. But the only thing that does kind of not make me panic a little bit is Luke Musgrave. The Packers drafted Luke Musgrave to be their starting tight end and Tucker Kraft to be their backup. It just so happened Luke Musgrave got injured, and then Tucker Kraft took his job and basically never gave it back. Now it's Luke Musgrave's time to earn that second round pick spot. And this is what I said coming out of the draft. I liked Tucker Kraft more as a complete tight end because of the blocking. I think Luke Musgrave is a better receiver than Tucker Kraft is. It's just that he is significantly worse at blocking. So I'm like, I'll take the lesser receiving ability for the better blocking. And that's why I thought Tucker Kraft was better. But Luke Musgrave is still a really good receiver and should be a really good receiver. And then Nate Hobbs got injured at corner. Is going to miss probably a couple of weeks. Matthew Golden got injured at receiver. He might miss some time. Aaron Banks got injured at guard, might miss some time. Colby Whitting got injured at defensive tackle, and that's also something that hurts is since trading Kenny Clark, their defensive tackle group is very thin, and their run game's very thin. So I think that's just a weird fluky game because the Packers have been best at attacking the downfield passing, and since the wind was so bad that they didn't feel comfortable doing it. And so I don't think it's like blow up the ship and panic, but they should have won this game. And if you're going to be an elite team, you need to beat the bad teams. And the Panthers are a bad team. But overall, the Panthers got to be happy with a win, and then the Packers. I'm not saying blow it up yet, but you needed to win this one. The next game is the Los Angeles Rams versus the New Orleans Saints. The Rams won 34-10. So the Rams won 34-10. The Rams' leading passer is Matthew Stafford, who threw for 281 yards and 4 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Kyren Williams, who had 114 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Puka Nacua, who had 95 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Saints, their leading passer is Tyler Shough, who had 176 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher is Taysom Hill, who had 30 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Rashid Shaheed, who had 68 receiving yards. So the Rams completely dominated this game off the bat, and they should have, because this Saints team is not very good. And so the Rams just kind of took care of business. Matthew Stafford looked great. Right now, he is the MVP of the league. Like, I don't understand. I hear people talking about, like, Josh Allen, Mahomes, Jordan Love, Dak Prescott, and it's like, no. Drake May, Lamar Jackson. But right now, Matthew Stafford is the definitive MVP of the NFL. Until he has a bad game and loses it, I don't know how anyone can pick anyone other than Matthew Stafford to be the MVP. Matthew Stafford has been playing amazing every single game. He is by far having the best year of his career, and like I said, he is the MVP of the NFL. Granted, we have plenty of season left, so of course he can blow it, or someone else can kind of come in and take over, but Matthew Stafford has to be the MVP right now. And like I said, the Rams just dominated. For the Saints, it was a first look at Tyler Shough over Spencer Rattler, which kind of surprised me because I thought Spencer Rattler has been playing really, really well this season. But Tyler Shough, he played fine. He played fine, and he didn't really play much because I saw it was like this. They set a record for one of the worst time of possession games in the NFL. Like, there's 60 minutes, and I think the Saints only had the ball for like 12 minutes, which was insane. And so we didn't see Shough play. When he played fine. I'm not saying he played bad, but he didn't play good. And I still think they should go with Spencer Rattler. I still think Spencer Rattler is a better quarterback, and I think Spencer Rattler, even though he had basically two bad games, I think overall he's been playing pretty well this season. Again, I got nothing about Tyler Shough. He played fine. So Rams, you gotta be happy with a win. Very competitive division. And then the Saints, your season's over, so you're just wondering, can Tyler Shough or Spencer Rattler prove themselves to potentially be the future of the franchise, and if not, who? So we'll see. The next game is the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Jaguars won 30-29. So the Jaguars won 30-29. The Jaguars' leading passer is Trevor Lawrence, who threw for 220 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher is Travis Etienne, who had 84 rushing yards. Their leading receiver is Parker Washington, who had 90 receiving yards. For the Raiders, their leading passer is Geno Smith, who threw for 284 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Ashton Jeanty, who had 42 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Brock Bowers, who had 127 yards and 3 touchdowns. So first off, I want to say Cam Little, the Jaguars kicker, made the NFL record 68-yard field goal. And I'm happy for him because I felt bad for him in preseason. He made a 70-yard field goal, but it technically didn't count because it's during preseason. So now he holds the NFL record. And that's something I don't like about the NFL new kick return rules, because based on the new kick return rules, effectively every team gets the ball at the 35-yard line. Well, if you get to the 50-yard line, that's where you get like a 68-yard field goal. And then if you look at like some of Brandon Aubrey's kicks, like a couple of them have been good for, like, looked like they'd be good from like 78, maybe 80 yards. And so it's one of those things where if you get a certain kicker, you might only need 10 to 15 yards to get into field goal range. And to me, that doesn't really seem fair. And I wish they'd revert back to the old kick return rules just because, again, I think that's kind of stupid that you only need about 10 to 15 yards. There could be a situation where you only need 10 to 15 yards of offense and then you're in scoring range. And I just don't like that. And then, so overall, both teams played pretty good. The Jaguars' offense played great. Geno Smith played great. It's hard to get invested in this one because the Raiders, they're done. They're out of the playoffs. And then the Jaguars, they're still keeping their hopes alive and playing well. Although I think they could be a playoff team. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team. What happened is they went into overtime, and then the Raiders went for two and didn't get it. Plain and simple. They went for two, didn't get it, and they lost. And I think this is the first time showcasing the NFL's new overtime rules, I think, in terms of Jaguars went down, scored a touchdown, and then the Raiders went down, scored a touchdown, and didn't get it. I could be wrong about that, but off of recent memory, this seems like the first time where both teams scored a touchdown and kind of showed the new overtime rules. But overall, Raiders actually look pretty good. Geno Smith played really great, and Brock Bowers, man, he looks like an amazing franchise tight end. So, I don't know what you got, because Geno Smith is trying to fight to save his career. Maybe he's done that, but it's also only one good game. And then the Jaguars, they should not have looked this bad against the Raiders, but, they won, so you gotta be happy with that. The next game is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills won 28-21. So the Bills won 28-21. The Bills' leading passer was Josh Allen, who threw for 273 yards and a touchdown. Their leading rusher was James Cook, who had 114 yards, and their leading receiver is Dalton Kincaid, who had 101 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Chiefs, their leading rusher was Patrick Mahomes, who had 250 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher was Kareem Hunt, who had 49 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Rashee Rice, who had 80 receiving yards. So in this game, the Bills' defense really stepped up. Even though the final box score looks close, it really wasn't close at all. The Bills dominated this game from start to finish. And that's the thing about it, is normally when you look at these Bills-Chiefs game, it is a complete offensive battle where can the Bills' great offense hang in with the Chiefs' great offense? And the Bills' defense usually gets dominated, but not this time. It felt like the Bills really shut down Mahomes for the most part and shut down the Chiefs' offense. And then Josh Allen played great. The Bills' offense played great. And, there's kind of nothing more to say. Here's the tough bit, though. It feels like Josh Allen and the Bills always have Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' number in the regular season. That's why I picked them. Because it's they always beat them in the regular season. Now can they do it come playoff time? And that's tough because it feels like the Bills just can't do it in the playoff time. And the Chiefs, yes, they lost. I still don't think they're out of the playoffs yet. And you really shouldn't write them off because they are a good team. But I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of cause for concern that they might not be able to pull this back. But I do trust the Chiefs will make the playoffs. So overall, Bills got to be happy for a win. And then the Chiefs, they did not look particularly good, and they lost. So you got to be very disappointed with that. The next game is the Seattle Seahawks versus the Washington Commanders, and the Seahawks won 38-14. So the Seahawks won 38-14. The Seahawks' leading passer is Sam Darnold, who threw for 330 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Kenneth Walker, who had 42 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had 129 receiving yards. For the Commanders, their leading passer is Jaden Daniels, who threw for 153 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher was Chris Rodriguez, who had 65 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver is Zach Ertz, who had 46 rushing yards. So the Seahawks dominated this game. Completely, utterly, simply dominated this game. Honestly, the Commanders just looked bad in every facet. Their defense looked bad. Jaden Daniels looked bad. Just everything looked horrible. And then the Seahawks, everything looked good. Their defense looked great. Sam Darnold played great. The offense looked great. This was just a complete one-sided beatdown. And then, to top it all off, Jaden Daniels got injured. So he did injure his arm, but they announced he wouldn't be done for the season. So it seemed like maybe he just broke his arm or something like that. Or it looked bad, but they said he will miss time, but it's not that bad. And that is something to me that you do have to think about with Jaden Daniels. And This to me is how game-changing Lamar Jackson is because yes, Lamar Jackson has been injured and he has missed several games in his career, but he's really changed what a running quarterback is and how unique he is. Because this is how I felt before his draft. When I looked at him as his talent, I'm like, this is the most talented quarterback in the draft, and he should be a first-round pick. And then on the flip side, I said, this is a running quarterback, so this makes him undraftable. And that's how I felt about Lamar Jackson, where it's like, if I was any team, I would not draft him, because even though he's talented, he is a running quarterback. Because we've saw that with all running quarterbacks. Michael Vick, constantly injured. RG3, constantly injured. Now look, Jaden Daniels might be constantly injured for his career. So that kind of shows a lot of uniqueness with Lamar Jackson, where he's a running quarterback, and somehow doesn't get injured as often as others. Again, he does get injured, but... So that is a cause for concern. But even before he got injured, Jaden Daniels just hasn't looked good this season. Like he had an amazing rookie season, and since then has been kind of terrible. And so that feels like the C.J. Stroud route, where C.J. Stroud, amazing rookie season, and then terrible. So I don't know, a lot of cause and concern for the Commanders because their defense has been holding it down and playing really well this season, and it struggled. It played bad. It's played bad the past several weeks. And then their offense played bad. And like I said, this is just total, complete domination. And that really makes the NFC West interesting because the Cardinals, I think, are basically out of it. Yes, this is being recorded before the Cardinals game, but I think the Cardinals are out of it. You have the Rams, who Matthew Stafford, like I said, is the MVP of the league and playing amazing. You have the Seahawks, who are also playing amazing and are one of the top teams. And then the 49ers, who are very, very injured, but keep finding ways to win. I don't think the 49ers really have much of a chance to win the division, but they're still sticking in it. So this will be a very, very interesting NFC West. The final game of the week is the Arizona Cardinals versus the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cardinals won 27-17. So the Cardinals won 27-17. The Cardinals' leading passer is Jacoby Brissett, who rushed for 261 yards, or who threw for 261 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Amari DeMarcado, who had 79 rushing yards, and their leading receiver was Marvin Harrison, who had 96 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Cowboys, their leading passer was Dak Prescott, who threw for 250 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher was Javonte Williams, who had 83 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was CeeDee Lamb, who had 85 receiving yards. So in this game, this felt like the Cardinals dominated the Cowboys the entire game. Dak struggled quite a lot at times, and the Cowboys really struggled to get anything going. And then Jacoby Brissett played spectacular. He's definitely earned the starting role over Kyler Murray right now. And he's played really, really well. And even though they've lost almost all his games this might actually be Jacoby Brissett's first win, if I remember correctly. He's played extremely well even in those losses. So you got to give him a lot of credit, and he's saving his career. I still don't think he is like a starting quarterback or a franchise guy. I think he's a low-level starter, high-end backup. But hey, maybe he can help finish out the season. Marvin Harrison is finally looking really, really good after his early struggles. And then the Cowboys. Their defense just sucks. Like, the losing Micah Parsons has been disastrous for them. I think it's no doubt about it has been a horrible idea. It was a horrible trade for them. They shouldn't have done it. And their defense just horrible. And so Cardinals got to be happy with a win. Cowboys, another disastrous loss. And that's where we are. I don't think either of these teams are playoff teams. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Which teams you like, which teams you don't, which players you like, which players you don't. And make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. And I'll see you on the next one.